Welcome to Intellicide, where we try to determine who murdered intelligence and common sense. I'm your co-host Anthony Gentry and my co-host Kyle Palmerville, and today's topic are where are we now and where do we go from here? So
How are
Kyle,
you?
I'm good. What about yourself?
This week has been a long year.
We're just one weekend, sir. Just one
Can you
weekend.
believe it's only been like 1 week? Like not
Well,
even a
hey,
week.
listen. It affects everybody differently. I
Yeah.
know that you texted me and you were going through it. Um, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be okay, Kyle. It's gonna be okay.
Well, it's funny because yeah, I don't know. I've gone through the grieving process. Um,
Right.
and it's honestly, it's for, I don't know. So I'm glad I'm talking to you because you have a different perspective on this than I do because, um, I don't know. We live in our own different worlds, and I admit that I might be in my own little bubble on this.
Hmm.
So it helps to have someone, you know, um, give me their perspective. So, I mean, everything that's happened since it's been kind of like this is where the gaslighting, and
Hmm.
just the everything comes in afterwards that
Hmm.
uh Project 2025, that
Hmm.
thing that we were like talking about beforehand
Yes,
and
sir.
warning people about, like, well, and people are going, oh, well, that'll never happen. You're just exaggerating, blah, blah, blah. Well,
Right.
that's exactly what they're doing now.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, um, yeah, I mean, they've already, cut funding to all scientific research. All cancer funding has lost all cancer research has lost federal funding. So like, how does this help anybody? Like all the things that they're
Right.
doing, and this is where it gets, I don't know, a little weird with like all those people who 3 months ago claimed that they cared so much about grocery prices and the
Hmm.
price of eggs
Right.
are now all saying they don't care about grocery prices and the price of eggs as long as they get to do all the stuff Trump's doing, which includes things like cutting cancer research.
Right.
And they're gleeful about it. And that's what I don't get. Like, how does this help you? You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a good look. It just isn't. There's a lot of, I guess you could say, poor sportsmanship. Um, if you want to classify it like
Just putting it
that.
lightly.
Oh, yeah, I mean, they're reveling in their victory,
Hmm.
and their side won. Um, People have to, regroup, refocus, and come back to the fight ready to go. Um, but I will tell anyone that feels discouraged, right now, don't. I saw a funny video about a clip on a guest on Bill Maher where some women were saying that okay, because they're the unpreferred or their disliked candidate won, that they would no longer copulate with men
Oh,
and
well, yeah.
have children, etc. And
Hmm.
the lady responded, "Well, that's stupid because then the conservatives will outbreed you," which has probably been the case for a while now. And the birth rates are declining in this country. But
Right.
you know,
I mean,
um,
it's pretty much, like we've talked about many times before, it's exactly what happened in Idiocracy.
mhm,
You know, the poorly educated are outbreeding the better educated, and it shows.
mhm, right.
Um, People are susceptible still to that bread and circuses
Oh yeah.
from Roman times, and now it's Fox News and TikTok and Facebook and X. Social media and conservative media are the media in America now.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, you got that right. Um,
what did
I,
you? So, what things have you been thinking about this week? What things stuck out to you?
well, I mean, honestly, as you said, we have a different little different perspective on things. While I don't like it, just because of some of the things that he said that he is going to do and how he carries himself. As a Christian, I am commanded to, pray for my leaders, and that includes the president.
Mm.
That they would do the right things, that, they would be guided by the principles of Jesus
What did you think of Bishop
right.
Buddy's?
Well, I had no problem with her message. Now, that's not to say that the president couldn't disagree with it, but all she did was ask for mercy. Now, mercy can come in very different ways and forms or whatever. And for him to say, "Hey, I take offense for you calling for mercy,"
Hmm.
and that's where I wanted to, talk about, like, you have to really look at someone's heart, you know, to say, okay, is this the right guy? I know a lot of people say that, hey, he was God sent. Now, I do believe that, God won't let things happen that, or whatever happens will, turn around for his good. Now, again, we don't know what form that will take. We might, actually see this president do some horrific things that, someone has to step up to do something good. We simply don't know. But I don't
When people
think,
say he was sent by God, I can't help but think, oh, you're talking about the same God that sent like the locusts, the plagues, and the floods, because that's kind of the same vein of
well,
sending.
right, that, again, we don't know what form that will take. But I will say that as the church, you have to look at someone. You want someone to have the morality to actually lead from a place of right.
Mhm.
And this person that is now holds the office, he doesn't he doesn't display that morality. I mean,
No,
you can't you know say he does. The way he talks to people, the way he demeans people, that's not right. And and
certainly not
and that's
going
what
to, certainly not unifying, that's for sure.
no, it's not unifying at all. I mean, now he did have some conciliatory words, or
Really, he did.
he did. I mean, in his if you looked at who he was in his first term and what he, said this term, yes, it was a little bit more conciliatory before he got into office, before he took the oath or whatever. But yes, everything that he's done or whatever, action wise, has been it hasn't been unifying at all.
Yeah, yeah. Huh. I don't know. To me, a lot of it has to do with, um, we talked in 2017 about how none of
Mhm.
that was normal, right?
Mhm.
And how it was all, and that's kind of where I think like the Democrats have gone wrong in
Mhm.
treating this the same way they did last time. Where last time they spent all their time talking about, well, this isn't normal, this isn't normal. Nobody cares. It's not normal now.
Mhm.
Now, it's so much farther than it was before because
Mhm.
now it's, you know, uh, an actual convicted criminal with legal immunity from the Supreme Court and a stated goal of vengeance,
Mhm.
you know, is in a position to do real harm.
Oh yeah, and
And that's the part of the thing is that, yeah, his followers are very gleeful about that. Hey, yeah, there are people who follow him who would be very happy if America did cease to exist. Because there's a lot of the people from like who fly like Confederate flags and things like
mhm.
that who really don't believe in the Union.
Well, listen, I think those people are misguided, and I've always said that anyone who
Misguided or not, they
holds
seem to be in power.
right, but anyone who holds up the Confederate flag and talks about heritage is at heart, you are holding in esteem traitors to the United States of America. So
I mean, this is,
there's no
yeah, I know. It's funny
if
when
ands
I
or buts
was
about it.
there are people in this country, and I never really realized it until I was in my 20s how bad it was down there, who really don't, you go far enough south, and there are people who think that the traitors were the North.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? And that the thing that
Right.
was betrayed was their quote unquote lifestyle, their
Right.
quote unquote heritage, which involved the practice of owning other human beings as
Right.
property.
Right. Because they say the Civil War wasn't about slavery, it was about states' rights. But it was
States'
about the
right
rights
to
of the
have
southern
slavery.
states to own slaves.
Yeah.
I mean, let's not make no bones about that. That's what it was about.
Yeah.
And again, if you wanna, venerate that flag, just know that you cannot hold in esteem the flag of the United States and the Confederate flags. Those are two opposing thoughts right there.
In reality, yes, but I don't think we live there anymore.
Right, right. But so you talked about the Democrats making mistakes that they did, from the previous term.
Mhm.
And that brings me to what I was saying about how the Democratic Party or liberals as a whole have to start training up new leadership, bringing, new voices, new ideas to the forefront. And I don't think that they're developing that leadership at all.
No, they're
Uh,
not.
I just looked at Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi is 84 years old.
Mhm.
Now, you know, I don't believe that she's had the same mental decline as President Biden had. And I give her credit for being able to maintain her vigor at that
Mhm.
age. But you're 84. I mean, let's say you make it to 100. I don't, believe that she'll be operating in Congress until she's 100. But, this is someone who has had, a lot of time in Congress, a lot of time as the, Speaker of the House, who has used the bully pulpit of her office effectively. But who is she transferring that knowledge, that skill to? And I don't
She's
think
trying
there's
not
anyone.
to. That's the problem.
What's that?
They're trying not to transfer it to
Right,
anybody.
right.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. I mean,
Yeah, it is.
it,
But let me ask you
it,
this. Why do you think that is? Why do you think she's
well,
going to do it
I
like that?
think it's because they want to hold on to their power,
But
But
why?
well, I mean, self-interest is the most, to me the highest reason, the most obvious reason. Now I don't know her personally, I can't speak on anything else, but it just seems to me that, hey, it's almost like in the corporate world. Hey, something, you have a skill or whatever. Hey, you need to train this young person to do that. They worry about being replaced, they worry about being displaced, removed. And I think that's a little bit, the same way in Congress, where if Nancy, teaches someone's the ins and out of her position, well, now that person could, run with it. I might not be seen as needed as much.
This is where, I don't know, maybe this is just me being cynical. And again, this is the difference in perspective. But to me,
Hmm.
you're talking about government, you're still talking about Democrats and about Congress as if it were at its height, as if it were
Hmm.
still, to me personally, we're at a place right now where Palpatine's in power. The Senate just doesn't have as much, it doesn't matter as much anymore.
Hmm.
Voldemort's in power, the ministry just doesn't matter as much anymore. You know what
Hmm.
I'm saying? And this is like those authors who wrote stories like that were basing it on historical precedents.
Hmm.
And when a dictator or an oligarch or an authoritarian or an autocrat takes power, even if the country was a democracy beforehand, and they start consolidating power, like is happening right now, Congress and all the rest of that don't matter as much anymore. And part of what we've seen here, part of how we got here, was to your point, the Democrats shutting out new voices, shutting out
Hmm.
younger people,
Hmm.
um, mostly, from my opinion, to protect their donors and their donor base over their voter base. That's pretty
Hmm.
much what they've done is they've sided with their donor base against their voter base.
Hmm.
And that's the problem with, the way that they can win is to take policies that their donors don't want them to take.
Right.
And this is where, people are saying, Bernie Sanders and people like that are saying America is an oligarchy now
Mhm.
because the rich are in control to a
Well,
degree they've
you
not
could
been
say it's been an
before.
oligarchy for a while now. I mean,
Yeah,
and
it
we talked
has.
about this what was that decision where, the money was unlimited now for
Oh,
these
well,
people?
Citizens United made it
Yeah,
for
Citizens
unlimited.
United.
But before that, there was actually a Harvard study that was done that, God, I want to say 10, 20 years ago,
Mhm.
that pointed out back then that America was a functional oligarchy because all of
Right.
the legislation and things being passed
Uh-huh.
benefited only the donors, and none of it reflected what the voters actually want.
Right.
There's literally like single digit percentages of what the voters actually want actually make it through Congress. It's all got to do with what the donor base wants,
Right.
which is part of the issue, that the Democratic Party right now is captured by the oligarchy in a way.
Well, it's not just the Democrat. It's the political parties in this country
Yeah,
that are
both parties.
captive.
But we have two, yeah, I mean, we have the system gives us two functional parties.
Right.
Right? We have a first past the post winner take all system that only really gives you two viable parties, a winner
Hmm.
and a loser.
Correct.
There's no proportional representation involved, so third
Right.
parties are literally just spoilers.
Right.
Um, so in this system, all you have to do is capture the two parties, or actually, all you have to do is capture one and a half party, because you can capture half of the other party, you can keep it from organizing or doing anything effectively.
Right. Right.
Um, and that's kind of what we're seeing.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the where
So
we go from here part.
uh-huh.
This is where I think our opinions might differ. I mean, in 2017, it was all about indivisible, and it was still, call your representatives, organize that way, make your voice heard with your representatives. And I think that's still good advice. However, I also think at the same time, there needs to be a lot more grassroots, local organizing by opponents of what's going on. And I'm not going to say Democrats because I don't know that the Democrats have done anything to really earn those people's support yet. But I think if enough people got together and showed common cause for things like wanting policies that benefit everybody,
Mhm.
regulation of capitalism, universal health care, the kind of things that would make this country great again. If enough people got together and demanded that stuff, then, it would be impossible to ignore.
Right. Oh, I agree with you. That I think is what you said. Capitalism is a majority of our problem here,
Yeah,
where
we
we've
are in late
allowed
stage cancer capitalism.
it's the pursuit of unbridled profit
Hmm.
is what is causing a lot of our issue. You know, these companies are cutting heads and they're making profit. They're making
Yeah.
record profits
Hmm.
quarter after quarter. And yet, oh, we're too fat. We have to cut. We have to cut. What are you cutting? So you can make more profit for
They're literally,
shareholders.
yeah, yeah. They'll cut 5% of their workforce casually
Yeah,
in order to raise the stock price a fraction of a point.
exactly.
Um, and yeah, it's like I think we've talked about before, but
Yeah,
like shareholder primacy. That's basically the Milton Friedman trickle down economics idea that all wealth should go to the very top.
right.
And that therefore you just have faith that'll trickle down. It's literally the trust me bro economics. Just give me all the money and
Listen,
trust me, some of it'll trickle down.
it's not trickling down. I
Yeah.
mean,
And that's the whole thing. Like the pursuit of wealth isn't necessarily what's wrong with the system. Like pursuing profit is okay. It's what's wrong is that those profits aren't shared equitably. People
well,
aren't getting the value for their labor. You spend all week working full time, you should be able to afford the basics.
that
I don't think that's
mentality
hmm?
originated in a day and age where manufacturing was our
Hmm.
primary, hey, you wanted to do something, you made a product, whatever
Right.
product it was. People no longer make that amount of money by producing a product. If I got $1 million, I don't need to open up a company or start a company and create a product. I can invest. I can put that
Hmm.
money in the stock market and make a boatload of money and not have expenditures as, creating a business. That's the
Yeah.
problem.
So, um, it's funny. A lot of, yeah, I don't know. Um,
So where do we
so,
go, Kyle? I want to know.
so this is the thing, and this is where, to me, a lot of people on the left, especially people who are from vulnerable communities,
Mhm,
are feeling, first it's despair and then it's panic and
mhm,
whatnot. And a lot of that is valid. But here's my thing. A lot of people need to take a deep breath, realize that a lot of what he's doing is never going to be enforceable, that he
mhm,
only has so much time in order to
mhm,
get this stuff done,
mhm,
and that the best thing we can do is stand in the way of him being able to do any of that.
mhm,
The best ways you could do that is, like you said, with your money, donate to the organizations that already exist to fight him. So
mhm,
things like the Democracy Defense Fund, the ACLU, things like that. All those organizations who are the first ones to step up and sue when the government passes legislation, donate to them if you can.
right,
Support those organizations. You don't have to create these organizations from the ground up because they already exist. Just go
mhm,
support them. The other thing you can do is organize locally.
right,
Find a group locally. Here's my personal advice. Find a book club. Libraries are the headquarters of the resistance in times like this. Go to your local library. Frequent
mhm,
it physically. Go there.
mhm,
Same thing with bookstores. Find like-minded people. Learn who they are. Get out in your community, and as much as possible, start doing good in your community.
right,
Volunteer, build relationships with people. That's how we get out of this. And honestly, it's not going to be easy, but if you can, in this particular time, you don't have to worry about saving the world. Just try to save your little piece of it.
right. Yeah, and you use the word grassroots. It's
Hmm.
going to take a grassroots movement, and it's going to take people who in their local communities associate with their neighbors and their fellow community members to show that, hey, yeah, you might not agree with my politics,
Hmm.
but don't castigate me as an enemy. That I think that's one of the things that really
Yeah.
rubs me the wrong way, where we at the end of the day are Americans. And to say that this side or that side is our enemy,
Hmm.
that's wrong or whatever.
No.
Because now you framed it a certain way where an enemy, you know, hey, what do you do to enemies? And not everyone
No, you're
practices
absolutely right.
Christianity. Not everyone is sitting up here. Hey, you have to love your enemy. They're not doing that.
Right.
So that's what I have a problem with, that mindset right there. And trust me, the president now, he's throwing out absurd things to see what the echo chamber is going to come back with. Hey, let's get rid of FEMA. I might get rid of FEMA.
Right.
Now, he doesn't have that power, but
Right.
he's throwing that idea out there to see how receptive it is. And
Hmm.
okay, right, we'll do away with it. Now, trust me, I'm not saying that FEMA is infallible, that there isn't room for improvement, but don't act like FEMA hasn't done good in red states and blue states.
Right.
We've
Ask all
had
those hurricane victims if they think
right.
we should be getting rid of FEMA.
That's it's crazy to me. And then
Hmm.
the other thing, how dare you go to California and say, "Hey, I'm not going to give you any more funding unless you implement these laws." That's
Yeah,
wrong. You
that
know,
is, it's all wrong.
right. Hey, now,
Yeah.
if you want to have a conversation with somebody to do that, that's fine. But hey, Mr. President, you have some citizens that are in dire need.
Hmm.
You know, how about you just go ahead and help them and then you come back later on and say, "Hey, I'd like to see this put into place."
Right. Yeah. That would take prioritizing the citizens, though. And we know that the person in charge right now doesn't do that.
Right.
He
Yes.
doesn't, it's the first time in my life I remember seeing a president come in who so openly had contempt for more than half the nation,
Right.
you know. The only people he really cares about are the few that supported him, and
Hmm.
of them, the only ones he really cares about are the billionaires, the ones he
Yeah.
let stand behind him in the inauguration. Did you notice that they kicked because he moved it indoors because it was
Hmm.
going to be a tiny crowd. It was the smallest inauguration
Hmm.
in modern history,
Hmm.
the lowest rated since television. And he knew it, so he moved it indoors. And then because
Hmm.
the rotunda was so small, he made Republican elected officials leave, kicked them out in order to make room for
Right.
donors.
Right. Yeah. We had to stand fast, stand firm, and come up with a game plan. Me personally, I pray that it's not going to be worse. But I also am not foolish enough to not think that this president, when he's a lame duck and he's nearing the end of his term,
Hmm.
that he might, might pass some laws or some
Go scorched
executive
earth.
orders that are way beyond the point of despotic.
Well, yeah, and he's been handed legal immunity for it.
Oh, crazy, crazy.
It
Yes,
is.
sir. Well,
You live in it's funny because there's an old Chinese saying, "May you live in interesting times."
mhm,
And it's not a compliment, it's not a
right.
blessing. Interesting, yeah, is and we live in interesting times
Yeah.
now. So,
Well, our
all
time
right.
is coming to an end there, sir.
Yes. All right. Well, it has been good to see you.
It has been good to see you, and whenever we have the opportunity to discuss these things, I'm all in. I just want to, let people know, hey, don't be discouraged, keep the faith, keep fighting.
Use that anger, funnel it into action.
Right. And next time go vote. Don't skip the lines because you think one candidate is gonna win over the other. Go vote.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed.
All right.
All right, sir.
Well, hey, like and subscribe, check us out. And we hope to see you next time. This is Anthony, that's Kyle, and this is Intellicide, and we're signing off.